The night was thick with tension, the moon a pale eye watching over the hidden leaf village as shadows stretched like grasping fingers. Beneath the veneer of peace, a sinister truth festered. Madara Uchiha, long thought dead, pulled the strings of the ninja world from the darkness. His influence seeped into every corner, manipulating alliances, stoking wars, and bending even the strongest shinobi to his will. The 5 great nations remained oblivious, their leaders unaware that their decisions were not their own. At the heart of the storm stood Naruto Uzumaki, the 7th Hokage, his fiery determination undimmed by the years. Yet even he could not shake the unease that clung to the village. Rumors whispered of missing nin with strange, hypnotic eyes, of missions gone awry without explanation. Tonight, as he patrolled the outskirts of the village, the air hummed with unseen malice. His blue eyes narrowed as a figure emerged from the tree line, tall, cloaked, the Sharingan's crimson glow piercing the gloom. "You're not just some rogue," Naruto growled, his fists tightening. The figure chuckled, a sound like dry leaves scraping stone. "Perceptive as ever, Hokage-sama," the man replied, tilting his head. The moonlight caught his face, a mask, cracked and white, etched with the Uchiha crest. Naruto didn't hesitate. With a burst of chakra, he lunged, his fist wreathed in golden energy. The masked man sidestepped effortlessly, his movements fluid as water. A kunai flashed in Naruto's free hand, but before it could connect, the air distorted. The man vanished, reappearing behind him with a sweeping kick. Naruto twisted mid-air, blocking with his forearm, the impact sending shockwaves through the trees. "You're fast," Naruto admitted, landing in a crouch. But not fast enough. His fingers flickered through seals, shadow clone Sharingan. A dozen copies erupted around the enemy, each one a perfect mirror of his resolve. The masked man merely sighed, his Sharingan spinning faster. A child's trick. He raised a hand, and the clones dissolved into smoke, dispelled by an unseen force. Naruto's breath hitched. Genjutsu? He hadn't even felt it. Before he could react, the man was upon him, a blade of black fire forming in his grip. Naruto barely dodged, the heat searing his cheek as he rolled aside. He countered with a Rasengan, the spiraling energy screeching as it collided with the dark flames. The explosion sent them both skidding back. Across the battlefield, Sasuke Uchiha's Rinnegan flared as he arrived, his sword already unsheathed. "Took you long enough," Naruto huffed, wiping blood from his lip. Sasuke didn't answer, his gaze locked on their foe. "You're not just an Uchiha," he said coldly. "You're him." The masked man laughed, low and mocking. "Clever, as expected of my descendant." With a flick of his wrist, the mask shattered, revealing the face beneath, Madara Uchiha, his eyes gleaming with the power of the eternal Mangekyo. "The world bows to my will, and soon, you will too." Naruto's stomach twisted. This wasn't just another enemy. This was the architect of countless tragedies, reborn from myth. But despair had no place in his heart. He exhaled sharply, his body blazing with Kurama's chakra, golden tails lashing the air. "Like hell we will." Sasuke's Rinnegan swirled, his Susanoo forming in an instant, a skeletal giant wreathed in violet fire. Together, they charged. Madara merely smirked, his own Susanoo erupting around him, taller, darker, its armored form radiating malice. The clash shook the earth, trees splintering under the force. Naruto's tailed beast bomb met Madara's majestic destroyer flame, the collision igniting the sky. Sasuke teleported behind Madara, his sword aimed for the spine, but Madara twisted, catching the blade with his bare hand. "Predictable," he sneered, crushing the steel like paper. The battle raged, each exchange more brutal than the last. Naruto's clones harried Madara from all sides, while Sasuke's Amaterasu seared the ground black. Yet Madara moved like a specter, his strength unfathomable. With a roar, he unleashed the perfect Susanoo, its colossal sword cleaving the battlefield in two. Naruto and Sasuke barely evaded, their bodies straining. This wasn't just a fight, it was a reckoning. And as Madara's laughter echoed through the night, one truth became clear: the ninja world had never been free. It had always been his. And now, they would have to tear it back from his grasp. The battlefield was a storm of chakra and desperation, the air thick with the scent of burning earth and sweat. Madara Uchiha stood at the center of it all, his crimson Sharingan gleaming with cold amusement as he surveyed the shinobi who dared oppose him. Naruto, Sasuke, and the remnants of the allied forces were battered but unbroken, their resolve hardening with every labored breath. "You still don't understand," Madara mused, his voice a low, mocking rumble. "This world has always been mine to shape." Naruto gritted his teeth, his sage mode enhanced senses flaring as he channeled Kurama's chakra, the golden cloak around him flickering like a dying flame. Beside him, Sasuke's Rinnegan pulsed, his sword humming with crackling lightning. "We're not done yet," Sasuke growled. In an instant, they moved. Naruto lunged forward, a Rasengan swirling violently in his palm, while Sasuke teleported behind Madara, his blade arcing toward the Uchiha's spine. Madara didn't even flinch. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a Susanoo ribcage, the spectral bones deflecting both attacks effortlessly. But Naruto wasn't deterred. He twisted midair, hurling a barrage of shadow clones that erupted into smoke as Madara's counterstrikes shattered them. Each explosion was a distraction. Sasuke seized the opening, his Rinnegan flaring as he activated Amino Tejikara, swapping places with one of the clones. His Chidori screamed toward Madara's chest, only for the Uchiha to phase through it, his body turning intangible. "Predictable," Madara taunted, reappearing above them. His perfect Susanoo manifested in full, the colossal warrior's sword descending like a guillotine. The ground split apart as Naruto and Sasuke barely dodged, the shockwave sending them skidding back. Dust choked the air, but Naruto's eyes burned with determination. "We need to push harder," he shouted, his voice raw. Kurama's chakra surged, merging with his sage energy, and his form shifted, the glowing whisker marks darkened, his pupils thinning into slits. Six paths sage mode. Sasuke felt the shift and smirked. About time. His Rinnegan spun wildly as he unleashed Indra's arrow, the lightning spear coalescing with Naruto's newly formed tailed beast bomb. The combined attack roared toward Madara, the sheer force tearing through the landscape. But Madara only laughed, his Rin Sharingan activating. Limbo, border jail. 4 invisible clones intercepted the blast, dispersing it into nothingness. The battle escalated into a blur of motion. Madara countered with meteors, summoning them from the heavens with a mere gesture. Naruto's clones scattered, hurling Rasen Shuriken to shatter the falling debris, while Sasuke carved through the remnants with his Susanoo sword. The strain was evident, sweat poured down their faces, muscles screaming in protest. But they couldn't stop. Not when the world hung in the balance. Madara, however, was relentless. He weaved hand signs faster than thought, his voice a whisper of death. Wood release, deep forest emergence. The earth erupted with towering trees, their branches snaking toward Naruto and Sasuke like living spears. Naruto roared, his tailed beast cloak expanding to incinerate the vines, while Sasuke's Amaterasu set the forest ablaze in black flames. Yet Madara was already upon them, his fists slamming into Naruto's gut with enough force to crater the earth. Sasuke barely managed to parry the follow-up strike with his sword, the impact rattling his bones. Blood dripped from Naruto's lips as he forced himself up, his body trembling. "We can't keep trading hits like this," he panted. Sasuke's grip tightened on his sword. "Then we end it now." Their eyes met, an unspoken understanding. Naruto's hands glowed as he formed a massive Rasengan, infused with every ounce of Kurama's power, while Sasuke's Chidori crackled with the intensity of a storm. They charged as one, their movements synchronized, their attacks aimed not at Madara, but at the space between them, where the Uchiha's intangibility would fail. Madara's eyes widened a fraction, just enough. The Rasengan and Chidori collided, the explosion swallowing everything in a blinding flash. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, through the smoke, Madara staggered, his chest scorched, his breathing ragged. But he was still standing. Still smiling. "Impressive," he admitted, wiping blood from his mouth. But not enough. The sky darkened as Madara's Rin Sharingan pulsed, his voice a thunderous declaration. "Infinite Tsukiyomi." The world itself seemed to hold its breath, the final act was about to begin. The air crackled with tension as Naruto and Sasuke stood battered but unbroken, their eyes locked onto Madara's towering figure. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered earth and flickering embers, the remnants of their previous clashes. Madara's crimson Rinnegan gleamed with cold amusement, his voice a low rumble. "You cling to hope like children to a fading dream. This world bends to my will, your struggle is meaningless." Naruto's fists clenched, his knuckles white beneath torn gloves. Kurama's chakra surged around him, a golden inferno that pulsed with his resolve. "We don't need hope, we make our own future," he roared, launching forward in a blur. Sasuke mirrored him, his Susanoo skeletal form solidifying into armored might, the purple blade slashing through the air. Madara barely flinched. With a flick of his wrist, he summoned a storm of black rods, each humming with sealing energy. They rained down like judgment, forcing Naruto to weave desperately, his body a whirlwind of motion. One grazed his shoulder, and he gritted his teeth against the searing pain. Sasuke wasn't as lucky, A rod impaled his thigh, pinning him to the ground. His Sharingan spun wildly, but Madara was already upon him, a hand outstretched to rip out his eyes. Naruto moved without thinking. A Rasengan, swirling with wind and fire, erupted in his palm as he slammed it into Madara's ribs. The explosion sent the Uchiha skidding back, his cloak singed. For the first time, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Persistent pests, he muttered, flexing his fingers. The ground beneath them split, massive roots erupting like serpents to ensnare them. Sasuke wrenched the rod free with a snarl, his vision swimming. He locked eyes with Naruto, wordless understanding passing between them. They'd fought side by side too many times to need words. In unison, they struck. Naruto's shadow clones swarmed, each one a distraction, while Sasuke's Amaterasu flames licked at Madara's heels. The Uchiha countered with a devastating Shinra Tensei, obliterating the clones and sending Sasuke crashing into a boulder. Naruto felt his stamina waning, Kurama's chakra flickering like a dying flame. But then, a voice, faint but firm, echoed in his mind. "You're not alone, idiot." Kurama's growl was laced with grudging respect. The fox's power surged anew, melding with Naruto's own, and in that moment, he understood. This wasn't just his fight. It was theirs. With a roar, Naruto unleashed a colossal Rasen Shuriken, its spiraling edges slicing through Madara's defenses. The Uchiha's eyes widened as it connected, his body convulsing under the violent chakra disruption. Sasuke seized the opening, his Susanoo's arrow notched and loosed in a single motion. It pierced Madara's chest, pinning him to the earth. Madara coughed blood, but his lips curled into a smirk. "You think this is enough?" His body began to glow, the Rin Sharingan's power spiraling out of control. The very fabric of reality warped, time itself seemed to stutter. Then, a hand clamped onto Madara's shoulder. Hashirama's spectral form materialized, his expression grave. "It's over, old friend." The first Hokage's would style binding coiled around Madara, sapping his strength. "You lost sight of what truly mattered." Madara's defiance faltered. For a heartbeat, the mask of the tyrant slipped, revealing the man beneath, haunted, hollow. The glow faded. The battlefield fell silent. When the dust settled, the world was forever changed. Villages once divided now stood united, their leaders humbled by the near destruction. Naruto and Sasuke, battered but victorious, clasped hands, a silent vow to forge a new era. And as the sun rose over the scarred land, its light touched the faces of those who had fought not for power, but for the future. The ninja world would never be the same. But for the first time in decades, it was free.